All right, Jimmy Gates, how are you, Pastor?
I'm doing well, Bishop Tony Minor. How are you
Okay,
doing?
all right. Look up to the audience. You looking at your phone? So listen, want to thank you for joining us on Legacy Moments TV, and this is a legacy action talk with Pastor Jimmy Gates, and today we're going to be talking about voting in Ohio. But first of all, I just want to ask you how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good in spite of the COVID-19 pandemic that has hit our city. Still staying at home. I was out today because of a funeral that I had to do, but I quickly did the funeral and ventured back home. There was only 24 people there. We practiced spacing, two to a pew every other row. No one was allowed unless they had on a mask and gloves. We was in there probably 35 minutes and gone.
All right, all right. Well, that's good. So you guys went up from 10 to now you're allowing 20, 25
Well,
people?
yes, because we can practice the safe spacing. Actually, we can go up to 50, but today I only said 24. And
Okay.
what I do now is I have them give me a seating plan of those who are supposed to be there. And if your name is not on the list, you cannot come in.
So is this part of the governor's new order, or has he
No,
eased?
this is something we started. I'm not sure because I didn't get to see the governor's press conference today. I'm not sure what his new directive was, but this is something we started over the weekend with the guests. We're going to have a guest list. The families supply us with a guest list of those who are going to attend the funeral.
Okay.
If anybody else on that guest list prior to the funeral starting during the family hour, they can come in and view and leave. After
Okay.
the funeral has started, they're not allowed
So
in.
so is it a full funeral or just a viewing?
It's for both.
Oh,
You
okay.
can
So
come
you
in
all
for the viewing
so
and keep going, but
so
only people on the guest list are allowed to stay.
okay, I see. All right. So we're talking about voting, okay, and
Yes,
Ohio, okay?
yes.
So tell me about your involvement. Talk about People for the American Way. Tell the viewers about your involvement in voting and what group or groups you belong to.
Well, I'm very actively involved in the democratic process of voting here in the state of Ohio, in Collier County, in the city of Cleveland. And I belong to this organization called People for American Way, which is a parent organization, but under the parent is African American Ministers Leadership and Council. And it's a group of clergy, men and women throughout the country from all parts of the United States. And we meet twice a year to collaborate to discuss our issues that we have and things that we're facing as it relates to the voting process. Unfortunately, this year we did not have the opportunity to have our spring conference because of the coronavirus issue that has impacted our country. But we have had a couple of Zoom conference calls with our executive director, Leslie Malachi Wilson, and there is one scheduled for tomorrow, I think at 3 o'clock.
Okay,
I've got to check my
and you
calendar.
all deal with a host of issues, but one of the issues you deal with is voting, right?
Yes, we deal with a lot of social justice issues, but voting and our as we deal with voting is nonpartisan, which means that we're not Democratic, we're not Republican. We our main concern is to get those clients registered, get them educated with voter participation, voter registration, voter education, voter demonstration, and we make sure people get to the polls to vote, not specifying who to vote for.
Okay, so that sounds like a really interesting group. So how did you get involved in that?
Well, I was introduced to the African American Ministers Leadership Council by a gentleman by the name of Bishop Tony Meyer, probably about 7, 8 years ago. Um, it was intended for someone else to be at this meeting, but for whatever reasons they weren't able to make it, and I got a call and I met the executive director. We had lunch and we talked about getting involved in the process, and ever since then it's been boots to the ground.
Right. Well, I used to work for Andrew Young, and Andy Young used to talk about how sometimes destiny is something that we stumble into. We stumble
Wow.
into it. And so
Well,
when you,
that's a classic response to what happened to me.
yeah,
I stumbled into this destiny, and it has been
yeah,
like a snowball effect. There's so many things that's involved with social justice that I wasn't exposed to, but in the last 8 years, it's been fun, but it's taxing. It takes a lot of work, it takes
okay,
commitment, it takes dedication. But you got to be able committed to do what we're called to do. It's a calling,
right,
and it's a
right.
ministry. That's what I look at it as.
Okay. So let's talk about voting in Ohio. So, plainly put, where are we? Where are we? Today is
Uh,
the
on a,
what?
if I were to grade this on a scale from 1 to 10, from this primary alone, I would say we're probably at a 2. I mean, this primary process that we're engaged in as we currently speaking is just not working, and I'm not sure if it's because of Corona, which caused our governor to cancel our primary election, which was scheduled for March the 17th, and he canceled it on the 16th. Subsequently, there were back and forth issues between the court and his administration, all the way up to about 4 o'clock the morning of March 17th, and then finally his health director put out a directive that it would not be healthy for us to be at a voting location voting in person. So the morning of the primary, it was canceled and was rescheduled for June 2nd. But there were some discussions with legislative law people within Columbus, Ohio, and they came up with this vote by mail process, which has totally been it's not working. From news reports that I was getting over the weekend, there were 700,000 applications that were mailed out that have yet to be turned in as of yesterday. Now, I'm not sure what kind of output they had today, with this being the last day. We haven't gotten any reports yet, but at least it needed to be postmarked today if you were going to put it in the mail. But there
Okay.
is
So
a mail.
so explain the process. So explain the process. So
Well,
Ohio.
the process is there is a application that needs to be filled out if you want a ballot. You fill out this application, which requires your name, your driver's license number, your address, city, state, zip code, and I believe it was a county as well. If you're a U.S. citizen, there were a couple more questions on the application, and then you mail that in. And supposedly within 2 to 3 days, you would get the actual ballot. It was clearly identified in an envelope with voting on it, with the United States stars over the envelope, so it was clearly marked when it came back to the home. And then, but they were saying it would take 2 or 3 days for that to come back to you once you mailed it. It took me about 6 days before I got my ballot back. So when you get the ballot back, you fill it out and you put it's 2 envelopes you have to put it in. The inside envelope and then the envelope that goes to the Board of Elections. You can do one or two things. You can either put it back in the mail because it is a metered stamped envelope, or you can take it down in person to the Board of Elections. I took mine down there because I wanted to make sure that it got there.
Okay. Okay. So then the election day is what day?
The election day was March 17th,
It's
but
been
right now I believe I think it's June 8th. I think it is no May the 8th. May
May
8th.
the 8th. May the 8th. And that's the
May.
last day to mail
Yes.
in your ballot
No, the last day for mail-in is today.
is today.
It has to be
Okay.
postmarked by today.
Okay. And that's not a request. That's the last day to vote or the last
Yes,
day
the last day for request was Friday.
was Friday.
Yeah,
Okay,
today
now
it
that's a
has to
very
be
short
postmarked.
that's a very short window. Now let's see if we get this right now. So the
Hmm.
last day to request a ballot was when?
Was Friday.
Was Friday. Okay, so if that was the
Yeah.
last day to request, Pastor, they wouldn't
Hmm.
have them back yet. Okay?
You would have to physically take it down there. But what they did was today and tomorrow they're going to open up the Board of Elections for those that feel that their ballot may not get back on time. You can come down there to fill out a provisional ballot. They will allow you to do that. The polls are going to be, the Board of Elections is going to be open tomorrow for those who are handicapped, those who have special needs, who need to come down and physically vote um, they will let you come down there tomorrow, the Board of Elections. But if you feel that your ballot did not get back in time, they will let you come down and do the provisional ballot right there at the Board of
Okay,
Elections.
I want to go back to something to be clear. So you said that the last day to request a ballot was Friday.
Was Friday, yes.
Okay. So then if that was the last day to request it, that was
I'm
and
sorry,
they
it's Thursday.
was
It was
Thursday.
Thursday, not Friday, Thursday.
Okay. So then if they mailed it in or they dropped it, right? They dropped it off, right?
No, that's to send it in to the Board of Elections
Yes.
so they can send you the ballot.
That's
That's
what I'm
the
saying. That's what I'm saying.
application.
So then how would they have it back in time enough if I put it in the mail on
Mm-hmm.
Friday, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? It
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't get to the board until when?
Probably Saturday.
Probably Saturday, right?
Yes.
Then if
Which
they
meant
mailed it back to me,
you would have gotten it to maybe the day or tomorrow.
right?
But they according to what we were told, they met with the United States Post Office, who agreed that there was some lax in getting that information back to the requester as well as back to the Board of Elections. It was taking outside like 5 to 7 days. They found some in the post offices themselves that they were just sitting there because they didn't know what that letter was, how it was easily identifiable
Okay.
based on how it was postmarked.
Okay.
So
So
there's some issues with the United States mail as well.
what is the May 8th date that you just mentioned?
The May 8th date, I believe, is everything has to be in, regardless of what it is. I believe that's the May 8th date. I need to double check it. But if they're even with the provisional ballots that they're giving an opportunity to come down and fill out, everything has to be in by May 8th so they can begin to tally whatever votes that are there. But again, as of Friday, 700 requests that have come to the Board of Elections
Okay.
for the ballot have not been turned back in. 700,000.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna see if anybody online is because those are very confusing dates. Okay, those are very
Mm-hmm.
confusing dates, and I think for the average person, a lot of people. Do you think people that this process is too confusing and people are not
Yes.
understanding it?
Yes, very confusing.
Okay.
Because even in conversation with people yesterday, there were some who thought they were going to open up the Board of Elections so that you could physically come down there to vote today and tomorrow, and that's not what they're doing.
Okay. And with that in mind, then I would argue that that's a form of voter suppression.
No doubt it is.
Yeah.
This whole process is a form of voter suppression. And I think it's time to do some advocacy now. Why wait until September or October to do some advocacy as we get ready for November 3rd? Because we need to have a structured process in place no later than June that people will know what they're doing. We need to advocate for additional time for early voting. Instead of 6 weeks, it needs to be 12 weeks. There are some people talking about maybe doing even a drive-through for voting at your precinct. Maybe precinct W votes on Monday, precinct X votes on Tuesday, precinct Y votes on Wednesday. I mean, this won't work in a general election. It just won't work.
That is so true. That is so true. So, what else is on the ballot? So why now? Some would argue they would think that because a lot has happened since November, since January, since March, right? Now,
Right.
I'm I would argue that a lot of people have forgotten what's on the ballot. Now, we know if you have great focus around the presidential election, okay,
Mm-hmm.
it seems
Mm-hmm.
that the Republican primary is null and void. That President Trump is going to be the candidate,
Exactly.
and now it's pretty clear with Bernie Sanders dropping out that Joe Biden is going to be the nominee. Okay, so
Right.
most people would probably not be inclined to vote. However, tell us,
Mm-hmm.
Pastor, are there other issues that are equally as important? Or maybe we could even argue more important.
I, and I would I would say they are more important than the presidential primary. And here's the reason: there's a Health and Human Services issue that's on the ballot, issue 33.
of which
Uh,
many have probably forgotten.
yes, there are so many judicial races on the ballot that are very important. You got common pleas judgeship. You got um, um, the Court of Appeals. You've got domestic relations. You've got, I think there's about 20 judge positions that are on the ballot. But this is what they did. When you send your request in to get a ballot mailed to your home, somehow they had that trigger a mechanism where you were automatically mailed out propaganda from the election about the issue, about the various candidates that were running. Not for all, but for some, it triggered something that they would send a mailing out to your home. Because when I filled out my application and sent it in, I was bombarded with those placards all over again. Vote for this and vote for that. It had stopped, but then when I sent my application, they started to come back out again. So I'm not
Okay.
sure how they did it, but that's what they did.
Okay, so I want to pause for a minute. So I just want to say to anybody that is viewing, this is also live on Facebook, and if you have a comment or a question, please include it because we're trying to get this right. All right, and I think that what's really important about this, in view of COVID-19, we don't know what the fall is going to look like because we don't know how this virus is going to either decrease or increase. We don't know if people are really going to go back to work. They're going to open up Ohio. It's going to stay open. We don't know if there's going to be a second wave of this virus in the fall. So there are a lot of unknowns. And at the same
Mhm.
time, Pastor, I want you to respond to this, right? As we go into the fall, why is it so important for us to get it right now so that we don't have these problems in the fall?
Well, this is almost like in sports, the exhibition season. We want to make sure that we are prepared to get our starters ready to go when the regular season starts. And that's why I said we don't need to wait till September or October to get things. And we need to start now to see what needs to be fixed so that we won't have any hiccups come November. Because right now people don't understand the process. They don't know what they're doing. Um, Nobody has really sat anyone down that's having a difficult time and know how to navigate this system. Yes, I know, and you probably know because this is what we do. We've been doing this for a while, but this was even new to me. Because as I've often said to people, I'm one of those traditional people. I love going to the poll. I've never used early voting. I will always participate and encourage people to go, but I just love to go to the poll, take my children and grandchildren with me so they'll understand the importance of it. This time, I didn't get that opportunity, and it left me really feeling a certain kind of way because I always look forward to going to the poll,
I see.
and
I
I
see.
think it's
So,
important that this election. I'm sorry, say it again.
no, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead. Keep going.
We need to understand that November 3rd, 2020, is probably the most important election in my lifetime. We need to get it right, and our job is to encourage people to vote. I don't tell anybody who to vote for, but I do educate them on the issues and about those who are running for the various positions. And once we educate you, then it's your job to participate in the voting process, which is extremely important this year. We will never get this opportunity again.
Right. And this is so very important because with all this going on right now, and people are trying to really prioritize. There's a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety right now. People are out of work. They're fearful. And so, in some ways, they are focused on what we would call hand to mouth issues, right?
Mm-hmm.
And trying to stay alive. And then at the
But
same time, we have this election, we have this primary. Now we know in the fall, that's why I'm saying we have to get it together. We have to get it together. And I think that we have too much dependency upon the man. We want the party to fix it, or we want the government to fix it. Ain't nobody coming to rescue us. right? And so it's up
Right.
to us to do the community organizing. It's up to us to understand the issues. It's up to us, even if it's online, if it's through phone calls. This is very, very critical in view of what's happening in the White House, in view of what's happening with the 1%. You know, I was very much so a Bernie person in concept, okay? In
Hmm.
concept, right? Now there's a practical side of it as well for me as to whether or not the concepts that I embrace, right? If it was easing on the school loans or getting rid of the school loans, if it was um, universal health care, all of those critical issues, evening out the playing field as far as finances, revenue, making sure that we have inclusion, economic opportunity. Now, how we accomplish that in this current democratic structure, not Democratic Party structure, but our democracy, right? Because we have this two-party system, we have the House, Senate, we just don't have the votes, right? So the question becomes, Jimmy, is do you think in some ways we are too dependent upon elected officials and too much of our plight and too much of our future rests in their hands as opposed to internally balancing it by trying to pool our resources and taking care of ourselves? Or are we actually doing both? We actually trying to do both?
I think it's a combination of both. But what you said earlier really personifies where we are now. Nobody is coming to rescue us. Uh, we put candidates in office through the democratic process of voting. They work for us. We've got the power. They don't, but we give them the power. Our job is to make sure that they understand what our agendas are, and they should pursue our agendas and not their agendas. Because many of them get to Washington, D.C., they get to Columbus, Ohio, and they get to the local city halls, and they forget the people that were responsible for them to sit in those chairs that gave them the opportunity of a lifetime to sit there to make the decisions that impact our lives. And sometimes we get so content and we just don't do what we are supposed to do. Make them accountable to us. And if they don't do what we've asked them to do or what their agenda was when they ran to get in that seat, then when it comes time for reelection, we should move them. Um, Again, I think we're dependent upon both of them. But if we begin to understand that the power that's within the people who we do have power, if we really understand that and utilize that power, then those that sit in those seats, whether it's national, whether it's local, whether it's state, whatever the case may be, and they will understand that they're accountable for us, and we will have better representation at all levels of government.
All right, sir. Well, that's well said. That's well said. And so I want to thank you for joining me on Legacy Moments. And this was a Legacy Moment action call with Pastor Jimmy Gates. And I just want to say to all of the audiences out there is that we need these kinds of forums. We need forums to talk about the critical issues. We need to hear from people that are out in the community whose souls are touching the feet, whose feet are touching the ground, bringing about social change. This is also a channel and a TV station that I'm going to use to talk to some of our heroes and sheroes and those who paved the way, those who opened the door before they die, that they can tell us how they got over and what steps they took to deal with their current situation 20 years, 30 years, 40 years ago. And to share with us equally, Pastor Gates, what their mistakes were. What are their regrets? And what things can we learn from them? I was talking to my son, and he was asking me the question whether or not I felt that my generation was failed by the generation that preceded me. And I knew what his second question was going to be, was whether or not my generation had failed his generation. Now, I said to him, let me tell you, I didn't answer the question, but I said to him, I said, son, who is a powerful activist, right? And I'm sure he's coming back to Cleveland, and I'm gonna get him to run for office. And he is 3 times more radical than I am, Tommy Money. Now, I said to him, I said, well, son, in a few years, there's gonna be another generation that's knocking on your door, that's gonna be more radical than you are. They're gonna be less patient than you are, because history shows that there's another generation. Now, this is the answer. We don't pass torches, we light torches. Because if I pass you my torch, then that means that I'm standing here without any fire. No, we don't pass torches, we light torches. Too many of us go away. We pass our torch and we retire. We pass our torch, we go on a retreat. We pass our torch and we sell out. No, we light torches. And I think that we must do a better job at lighting a torch and creating opportunities so that they that come behind us can serve. So thank you very much, Pastor. We'll be calling you back. Any thoughts? Any closing thoughts?
You know, just in conjunction with what you just talked about, generations, and you know the Bible, where the Bible says there was a generation that knew not Pharaoh, that did not understand the impact of what he made to that generation. And we want to make sure that we leave a lasting impact. And in order to leave a lasting impact, then we can't just, as you said, pass the torch. Because if I pass it, then that means I don't have any light. And I'm sitting down on the sidelines. And we can't afford to do that. We got to stay in the game. If it's nothing more than for a just advice, we've got to stay in the game to make sure that the ball does not get dropped, and we continue to build momentum so that we, as generations come behind us, they will feel more confident in our ability to lead and guide them in the right directions.
Well, thank you very much. And that's so important, because as you know, last week, 2 weeks ago, we buried, unfortunately, in the midst of COVID, my mentor, Reverend Dr. Joseph Lowry, and I remember when he came to Cleveland, the last time he came to Cleveland, and I always tell this story, and this had to be 15, 20, it had to be 20 years ago, right? 15, maybe 15, 20 years ago.
I remember he was here a couple of years ago. You were out of town. Remember I met him.
Oh, that's right. So he was here. Yeah, he was here. Yeah, but the last time he was here and I was in town, and I've seen him since, because I go to my other home, right? So I've seen him since. But the last time he was here, the conversation we had, because he had formed a new group in Georgia, and I said to him I wanted him to come back to Cleveland and help me plant a Ohio coalition for the People's Agenda, because he was chair and founder of the Georgia Coalition for the People's Agenda. And I remember he told me, and you heard me tell this story so many times. He said to me, Tony, ain't nobody coming to rescue you. What I need to come for? Everything you need, you got. And that's the truth. We have. And we just need to work together, have confidence in ourselves, and do the work that God has called us to do. Thank you, and God bless you, Pastor.
All right, bless you too, Bishop.
All right, I'll be in touch, man.
All right, take care. Good night.